Elaine, a busy few weeks ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, it certainly will be. Well, Elaine mentioned Figan Murray there. And 7 years ago tonight, her son was one of 22 young people who lost their lives when a terrorist bombed the Manchester Arena.
Yeah, he was Martin Het, and his mum has just completed a 200-mile walk to Downing Street to demand better safety in public venues.
Yeah, she wanted a commitment from Rishi Sunak to get Martin's Law passed by Parliament, to insist that venues and local authorities have a legal duty to produce plans to combat terrorism. But she left Downing Street without the promise she so badly wanted.
With her, as she finished her marathon walk to Westminster, was our correspondent, Victoria Grimes.
2 weeks, 200 miles and as many blisters, but today Figan Murray reached her final destination. At the gates of Downing Street, surrounded by her family and an army of supporters, no sign her resolve had wavered, despite the toll on her body.
How are you feeling?
Brilliant, yeah. It's a long time coming.
Yeah.
But,
exhausted?
Yeah. Exhausted, tired, but determined.
And what are you going to say to Mr Sunak?
I'd like an answer. I'd like a date, please. Yeah, absolutely. I think we deserve this. Yeah. We deserve a date.
This has been an incredible journey, and I just hope someone in the government up there will listen to what Figan and Nick and Brendan have been trying to say for so long now.
It was from the place where Martin died that Figan's epic journey began. She's battled the elements and the pain.
So today is day 9. Walking in beautiful countryside, but my hip is sore, my left foot is sore.
In the hope the government will finally implement Martin's Law to make public spaces like concert venues safer for everyone. But 18 months since the Prime Minister made a personal commitment to her, she's still waiting for it to come into force. Today, she brought her campaign right to his front door.
Well, this has been a long road for Figan Murray in more ways than one. Today marks the 7th anniversary of the arena attack, 7 years since Martin Het was killed. So her meeting today with the Prime Minister over Martin's Law is crucial.
I'm full of determination now we're here. It's been a long time coming. I'm exhausted, I'm in pain, but I'm here, I've made it, and today is the day I want answers.
There were signs he was listening.
Mr Speaker, I know the whole House will join me in remembering the victims of the horrific Manchester Arena bombing 7 years ago today. Our thoughts are with them and their families, and I'd like to pay tribute to Figan Murray, who joins us in the gallery for her courage and her bravery of her campaigning in her son Martin's memory, and I look forward to meeting her later today too.
From her family, there was nothing but pride.
I don't know if she'll walk again after it, but she was definitely going to make it here.
No, it's not an answer.
She hasn't
today,
said along the whole way, I can't do it. So she's just kept going. It's quite incredible.
She may be small in stature, but huge in courage. Victoria Grimes, ITV News, Westminster.
Yeah, such a remarkable woman. Well, it is often stressed that the person responsible for the bombing was a terrorist, but the inquiry that followed flagged up a number of recommendations. It said there was a failure to declare a major incident for 2.5 hours.
Among other issues, the inquiry called for better communication between the emergency services and for better first aid training at venues.
Well, earlier we were joined by one of the country's leading experts in emergency planning and disaster recovery, Professor Lucy Easthope from Liverpool. She told us why it is so important that Martin's Law becomes law.
Well, I think it's so important. I also feel some sadness that this is how we make change happen after these events, that she has to do this to get this attention. This should have been passed a long time ago, and as emergency planners would have made a huge difference to us in being able to implement the recommendations. So the sooner it can be passed, really, the better for us.
Is enough being done at the moment to keep our public venues safe?
I know that the families of those affected by all of these incidents, and I know that the public want me to say yes, but the answer is no. Not nearly enough is being done. Several of the major recommendations of the inquiry are still not there yet.
What would you have as a priority then?
One of the things that being able to counter this sort of terrorism requires is us to be able to resource our police, our fire and our ambulance at all times. These events don't happen in a separate part of what's happening to public services, so we desperately need support for all public services. We need a greater awareness of what the public can do in these kind of incidents. It would be great, for example, to mirror some other countries that supports things like first person on the scene, first aid. So there's quite a lot to do.
But there are lessons that still need to be learnt, aren't there?
I think there's honesty that still needs to happen is probably the bigger question. Lessons learned is a term that has become so loaded in emergency planning. They're actually just lessons that the inquiry feels are probably the safest ones to put out. Often inquiry reports don't deal with the thorniest issues. We are still seeing commanders of these kind of incidents struggling with their imagination, struggling to believe they'll be in the hot seat. One of the fears that commanders have about declaring a major incident is that they will be seen as not having the grip necessary on the incident by ministers, and their own jobs will be under threat.
After the event, why don't organisations just simply hold their hands up and say, on the night we were under huge pressure and we made mistakes. This is what we got wrong, so that we can learn from it straight away, not have endless public inquiries to be told that.
I think the public more and more now are just screaming out for authenticity, for honesty, for difficult honesty, for tell us the truth. I always say there are two sounds in the immediate aftermath of tragedy, the sirens and the shredders.
That is shocking.
It's very, very hard to come to terms with, to constantly see self-preservation, denial, othering of the victims of an incident, and a massive effort that could have been put into preventing an incident, massive effort put into basically conspiring, and then waiting for a number of decades to pass for what the families and the communities, and families and communities are often so intuitive, they know exactly what originally went wrong, and sometimes they're quite forgiving of that in the early stages. They understand that these events are messy and complex, and particularly with terror, they understand that an act of war has happened to their loved ones. They're up for honesty at that point. But what happens is, as the cover-up continues over time, they lose any faith they had in the responders. And so being able to tell the truth is one of the biggest things we struggle with in the aftermath of tragedy.
Well, on this, of course, the saddest of anniversaries for anyone who was impacted by the Arena disaster. Can you say whether we've learnt anything from that we've improved things?
We went into the sort of early 2000s with agencies, particularly police, fire and ambulance, not working terribly well together. We've worked so hard to fix that. We have seen venue improvement, we've seen security improvement. Where we've stalled, as I've said, is around things like first aid and public awareness. We're going backwards in some areas. But what I think probably most inspires me at the moment is I feel like I'm living in a time where my public are really interested in emergency plans and emergency planning. And that's the only way as a community you are strong against these things.
Lucy, thank you.
Thank you.
And our thoughts, of course, are with people who were affected by the Arena attack tonight. Well, moving on, next, the heartbreaking words